to excuse the amount of PC Engine stuff of late. The truth is, I'm having a bit of a sort out of the rubbish heap behind me. There's some stuff at the back of it that I really want to review in coming videos, but I just can't find it. If only it was arranged nicely on, say, a bookshelf for me to sit in front of when making these reviews. Ha! Fat chance I'm doing that. Today I'm looking at what I would call a digital comic, Ranma £1 Toraware no Hanayome, or Ranma ½ The Captured Bride. For those of us of a certain age, Ranma is one of those classic shonen manga series from acclaimed mangaka Rumiko Takahashi. But don't let shonen, which means boy in Japanese, put you off, as Ranma can definitely be enjoyed beyond its general target demographic, including this game. When released in 1991, Ranma ½ was probably at the peak of its popularity, with an ongoing anime series on TV, video games on most popular systems of the time, and the manga itself was about halfway through its overall run length. If you're not a Ranma fan, the appeal of this game might be quite limited, but if you can understand at least a decent conversational level of Japanese, there is an amusing enough story here. But for fans of the series, you'll find a lot more here to enjoy. So let's dive in and find out whether this game is like a comforting warm bath or like being doused with a bucket of cold water. To quickly brief you on the basics of Ranma's story, you primarily play as Ranma Saotome, a 16-year-old martial artist who during a trading trip to Jusenkyo in China with his father, fatefully falls into the so-called Nanichuan. On emerging from the spring, Ranma emerges not as a young man, but as a young woman. Hereafter, whenever Ranma is doused with cold water, he changes into his female form, and when doused with hot water, he reverts back to his male form. And so the story goes that Ranma is determined one day to cure his so-called curse to be permanently male again. This digital comic is like watching an episode of the anime or reading one of the manga's arcs. Absurd, silly, and engaging, but it doesn't break new ground. If this had been animated or an actual arc in the manga, it would not be out of place, and that's a good thing. The story starts with Ranma and his fiancée Akane walking to school. On arriving, they find that a special morning assembly has been organised by the frankly batshit crazy Principal Kuno, who also happens to be the father of characters Tatiwake Kuno and Kodachi Kuno, both of whom vie for Ranma's affections, albeit Kuno for Ranma's female form, the so-called pig-tailed girl, and Kodachi for Ranma's male form. There, Principal Kuno announces anyone receiving 100% in an end-of-term test will receive 2 tickets for a honeymoon trip to Chugoku, which is Japanese for China, and, well, I'll get to that. Ranma, not exactly being a grade A student, I know how he feels, tries to find a shortcut to passing the test, being desperate to get back to China to cure his curse and all. And so, all of the hijinks that follow revolve around the characters that have their eyes on Ranma, either as a love interest or as a rival. Many of the manga and anime characters such as Ryoga, Son, Cologne, Moose feature alongside, with less seen characters such as Tsubasa. Other regular characters such as Akane's sisters Nabiki and Kasumi don't feature that much in this game. Before returning to a little bit more about the story, let's talk about what this game plays like and its presentation. First off, being a 1991 game on CD-ROM, this game is actually a pretty big achievement. It features a lot of voice acting from the actual anime voice acting cast. It sounds good, it's good quality, and it's easy to understand. But in order to fit so much of the voice work on a CD, the game's music is almost entirely from the PC Engine itself, except for the opening and closing sequences, the former of which is the original anime opening theme Daja Uma ni Sasanaide from Nishio Etsuko, which is an instant blast of nostalgia. I find these chiptunes to be mostly quite charming, but they do get a little bit repetitive from time to time. Visually, the characters are represented excellently, looking as good as the best episodes of the anime, which itself had some occasionally rather dodgy-looking character representations. The animation may not look like much today, but for 1991 on the PC Engine, it's good. It's not up there with the Mega CD's later Urusei Yatsura game, but it's visually pretty darn good, and I felt like I was playing an authentic work. By the end of it, I came away feeling like I played through an above-average episode of the anime, which may sound like I'm dabbing it with faint praise, but actually I was impressed considering what other systems at the time had on CD-ROM media. Gameplay-wise, though, is very simplistic, with commands listed down the left-hand side, which change depending on the context, but usually involve look, speak, touch, fight, think and move. Sometimes it can be minorly confusing what to do to move things on, with the look and speak commands sometimes feeling like they are interchangeable, but the options are usually few enough that if you feel like you got stuck, it won't take you long to figure out what to do. Essentially, you have to trigger certain parts of the story to move things on. An example of this happens early on, where you flick between a Tendo dojo where Ranma lives and the surrounding streets where you have to converse with Cologne, return to the dojo to talk with Son, and then back to Cologne, back to Son, and so on and so forth until you eventually encounter Pichan or Ryoga's cursed pig form where Cologne was previously hanging out. In essence, you can't really skip the story. The game will be expecting certain things to be triggered to move on. So back to the story. At various points, fights will be triggered, and again, you'll need to fight by triggering actions and special techniques. The first time you'll encounter this is on the day of the so-called end of term test, where to extract the answers, Ranma will fight the other competitors to get the answer. It's amusing if a little drawn out, and thankfully these fight sequences do get somewhat shorter as the story progresses. By the end of the test, Ranma succeeds and gets what he wanted, the tickets to visit Chugoku. If you don't want the story spoiled, please skip to the timestamp noted below. Okay, if you don't mind one of the game's punchlines being spoiled, here we go! Why am I saying Chugoku, not China? Well, that's the punchline. The tickets aren't to visit Chugoku, the country of China. They are to visit Shimane and Tottori prefectures, which are in the Chugoku region of Japan. Whilst Chugoku does indeed mean China in Japanese, it can also mean the western region of Japan that is also called Chugoku, as the word literally means middle country. As a region in Japan, Chugoku refers to the westernmost prefectures of Honshu Island, Yamaguchi, Hiroshima, Okayama, and as mentioned, Shimane and Tottori. So the story picks up with Akane, Tsubasa and Ranma seemingly looking out over the sand dunes in Tottori. Anyone who understands Japanese as a language will know that wordplay is a huge part of the language and the humour of Japan, and so this is a good example of it making a nice punchline. Okay, for those of you who skipped ahead so as not to spoil the punchline, you're now safe. So I won't spoil the rest of the story of this game, as fans will want to play through and enjoy it for themselves. So, how do I rate this game? First, let's look at the Japanese level. I rate this game as fluent, but if you're decently conversational, you can make it through the game. I think if you're JLPT N3 level, you'll be surprised at the amount of vocabulary you will learn. But this is a good thing for those learning a language, and grammatically, it's not that complex. The text is written with kanji, which makes comprehension much easier, along with hiragana and katakana, of course. Legibility overall is fair, though. The PC Engine's resolution does somewhat compress the kanji, and you'll need to be hella familiar with some of the high-level kanji, because man, some of it is a bit mangled, but it's mostly easy enough to read. There is no furigana, and for the most part, the spoken and written dialogue is very casual Japanese. So if you're only familiar with Masuke, this will be an education for you, but it will really help level up your comprehension. As to the game itself, well, fundamentally it's a digital comic, so it's not gameplay as such. It's a more, does it navigate well, is the story good, and how is it presented? In this regard, I rate it as good overall, or 3 stars out of 5 on my rating scheme. Whilst I think this is actually quite a fundamental piece of work for 1991, with all of the voice acting and quality of presentation, it is, after all, 2025 at the time of this review, so I have to balance my historical respect with what it's like to play today, and yes, overall it's good. The fight sequences can sometimes seem a little bit drawn out, and sometimes it feels a bit like the look and speak commands do a bit too much heavy lifting, often requiring repeated activation, but that wasn't uncommon for the time. Another huge plus point is that you can load and save almost anywhere in the game. Once the story is completed, though, there is nothing else to see. In summary, this is one for the fans in the series who will enjoy and laugh at the story, and for those learning Japanese, it's good study material that will help you understand manga and anime in Japanese better. As always, like, subscribe and all of that shit, and also check out this rad Rubbish Heap merch, available worldwide on Redbubble and Amazon. See the links below for how to purchase. I've been Saki Endo, and this has been a Rubbish Heap. Ja ne ne!